Perhaps the most popular shrub here where I'm at in the southeastern United States for parched sun areas is the azalea. In this video, what I want to do is show you how to properly plant your azaleas and also how to care for them as well. Hi, I'm Dr. Tom Warren and you're watching The Plant Doctor. Let's get started. Before we plant an azalea, probably the most important thing that we need to look at is site selection. So with azaleas, if we can give them some afternoon shade, they're going to do the best. Some morning sun, afternoon shade, and they're going to thrive in terms of sun requirement. So where I have them here, over here off to my right, they're going to get some morning sun. This is east. As the sun tracks behind me here, this is south. They're going to be shaded by these oak trees. And then right in the late evening, as twilight hits, they get past these trees and they're going to get a little more sun as well. So they're getting about 6 hours of sunlight right here, which is pretty much ideal for an azalea. The second consideration you need to look into is your soil type. We want a well-drained soil. You do not want to plant these where you have constantly wet soils. If you have anaerobic soils, soils that constantly hold water, they're saturated, azaleas are not going to do well in that environment. Here where I'm at, I have very sandy soils. We have a very well-drained but moist soil. There's enough organic matter in it that it's going to hold some moisture, and azaleas just thrive in that environment. If you can, do not plant these in an anaerobic soil. You're just setting yourself up for failure later down the road. If you've never done a soil test on your property, I would encourage you to do a soil test before planting azaleas. Azaleas are in the family Ericaceae. Ericaceae are the acid lovers. They like a pH between 4.5 and 5.5. Rhododendrons are in this family. Blueberries are in this family as well. There's a whole host of plants that like acid soils. Azaleas are one of them. If you're watching this and you're in the United States, your local land grant institution will have a soil testing lab. I live in Alabama. For me, it's Auburn University. If you live in Tennessee, it's the University of Tennessee. If you live in South Carolina, it's Clemson. But you can look up your local land grant university and send in a soil test for them, and it's cheap. I think it's $8 for me to get a soil sample sent to Auburn and get results back. I'm looking at the pH for my azaleas. I want a 4.5 to 5.5. If you're higher than that, you may need to add sulfur to your soil to lower the pH so that your azaleas will thrive. So now that we've talked about site location, we've talked about soil types that azaleas prefer, let's talk about how to plant an azalea. So an azalea does not want to be planted too deeply. We want to plant them a little bit high. And so I'm just going to dig a hole here, and your hole, you want the height of your hole to be about the same height as the pot. So this pot here is roughly a foot tall. So we're going to dig a hole here that's about a foot tall. And we also want our hole to be about twice as wide as the width of the pot. So I'm making the hole wider than the pot is. We're going to chop up the native soil really good and backfill with it. So now that our hole is dug, the hole is about the same depth as the height of our pot, and it's about twice as wide. I'm actually going to put a handful or two of soil back in the bottom, because remember, I want my azalea to be planted just a smidge higher than the native soil is around it. And so when we put that loose soil back in there, the roots that are in the very bottom, it gives them a place to gain some traction. It's going to help our plant out a little bit. Anytime you're taking a plant out of a pot, what I don't want you to do is just grab the vegetative material here and pull, because sometimes the plant will be root bound and you're going to rip the vegetative material away from the root. What I want you to do, lay it on its side, massage it a little bit, hold it upside down or on its side, grab one of the holes in the bottom of the pot, pull it off that way. Now this particular azalea is a little bit root bound. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to massage this root ball a little bit. Just going to dig into it with my thumb and finger, break some of those roots, because we don't want this plant to girdle. So if a plant is root bound from the pot, the roots could continue to grow in a circle and they don't grow out. We call that girdling. And so we're just going to break a few of these roots, and that's going to encourage those roots to grow out and not around. I'm just a little bit deep here, so we're going to put a little more soil back in. Now that our azalea is properly placed a little bit above the native soil line, we have our hole dug twice as big as the root ball itself. Our native soil We've amended it with the shovel. We've chopped it up really fine. I don't have to do that a lot here with sandy soils, but if you have more of a clay soil, you have red clays, you may have to really bust it up. And we are just going to backfill back around this azalea. One thing that I want to point out about backfilling, don't put the native soil back on top of the root ball. So you don't want to pile up a bunch of soil on top of your root ball. You want the top of the root ball to be exposed to the atmosphere. The reason being, plants do take up oxygen through their roots. I know they take in CO2 through their leaves and doing the whole photosynthesis thing, but they're also taking in oxygen. If you cover those roots up, you run the risk of not allowing your plant to get enough oxygen via its roots. And this is what the finished product should look like. So notice here, we've got our root ball exposed. We've pulled up the native soil up to the base. I'll try to pull it back a little bit. There's the end of our root ball. So we've got that soil tucked in there nice and neat. No air gaps anywhere. That is the proper way to put an azalea into a flower bed. So I have 2 more azaleas here to plant. Let's talk about what I'm going to do with these after I plant the azaleas. We're going to come back in and put pine straw in this area. Pine straw is an excellent mulch for azaleas. It naturally helps acidify the soil, which these guys love. I'm going to water these right now. It's the middle of July. You can probably tell because I'm sweating really bad here. We're going to water these about twice a week right now. If I was planting these in the fall, which is more ideal, I'm probably going to water those once a week. Going into the spring, as long as I'm getting rain, I'm not going to water these. I'm not going to water them next summer either, unless we hit a drought period. If I don't get rain for about a week, so on average here where I'm at in the summertime, we get afternoon showers about every 2 to 4 days. If I don't have that going on, I'm going to come out here and water them. Other than that, I'm going to let them go. Once our azaleas are in the ground, I want to feed them here just a little bit. I've planted these in late July, and so they're still going to be actively growing in August, September, October. I'll get a frost here in zone 8A late October, early November, and they're not going to be actively feeding as much as they are this time of year. But nevertheless, I want to give them some nutrients now. What I'm using is a smart fertilizer from Dakota. Our friends over there, they sent me some samples. I've been using this. I'm going to have some more videos up about their products here in the coming weeks. I've been really impressed with this. This is a 15-5-15 fertilizer, so 15% nitrogen, 5% phosphorus, 15% potassium. And we're just going to lightly sprinkle some of this over these azaleas. This is a 90-day prill, so it's going to feed about until I get that first frost. And I'm going to sprinkle roughly about 1 tablespoon each on these. You don't have to be real exact here. And as far as nutrition, that is all I'm going to give them this year. As we get into next spring, as I see new flushes of growth coming up on these. So early to mid-April, these will start to flush out again with new growth. We'll come back in, give them some more fertilizer to get them off to a good start. If you have any questions about azaleas, please make sure to leave those down in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer those. Guys, as always, thank you for watching The Plant Doctor. And until next time, happy gardening.